Over 3 months since the government announced these local inquiries, Tom Crowther KC, a barrister invited by the Home Office to help establish them, knows almost nothing about their progress, and neither do we. Why is the £5 million set aside for inquiries no longer being allocated, but instead delivered on an opt-in basis? Will the Minister accept that, in many cases, these crimes were racially and religiously aggravated? How, without a national inquiry, can we understand what part these factors played?
Ever wonder what happens when rehearsed political soundbites meet cold, hard facts? In one of Parliament's most revelatory exchanges, Labour MP Jess Phillips, known for her emotional appeals and media presence, found herself cornered by Katie Lam's surgical precision. Within minutes, Phillips's trademark confidence dissolved into stuttering contradictions as Lam methodically exposed the glaring gaps in Labour's approach to the grooming gang crisis. What followed wasn't just a political exchange, it was the unraveling of a carefully constructed public persona.
And I am sorry to say that unit, Mr. Speaker, must also investigate police officers. In one case, the father of an abuse victim in Rotherham was arrested by South Yorkshire Police when he attempted to rescue his daughter from her abusers. How, without a national inquiry, can we know how and why these monsters enjoyed effective immunity for so long? And how can we be sure it will not happen again? In Kirklees, Judge Marson said, "You were seen with your victim on at least 3 occasions by the police. None of that deterred you, and you continued to rape her."
That's fooled voters for years. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. In British politics, style often triumphs over substance, until it doesn't. The parliamentary showdown between Jess Phillips and Katie Lam represents a masterclass in the limitations of emotional politics when confronted with precision questioning. Phillips, who has built her political brand on passionate speeches and righteous indignation, suddenly found herself unable to deflect when faced with Lam's methodical approach to a deeply serious issue. What makes this exchange particularly revealing is how quickly Phillips's usual tactics failed her.
In January, the Home Secretary said the government would conduct 5 local inquiries into the rape gangs which have terrorised so many innocent children. Why is the framework for local inquiries now being led by ministers rather than by independent voices such as Tom Crowther? And what does the government intend to do about local leaders who say there is no need for an independent inquiry, like in Bradford or in Wales?
When pressed about the government's approach to grooming gang inquiries, she resorted to her trademark emotional appeals and gesticulations, strategies that had served her well in media appearances and viral clips. But Lam wasn't playing by those rules. Her questioning remained laser-focused on policy specifics, particularly the decision to make the inquiries minister-led rather than independent. The contrast in their approaches couldn't have been starker. While Phillips attempted to paint broad strokes of concern and commitment, Lam systematically dismantled the government's position by focusing on concrete measures that could better protect vulnerable children. This wasn't about performative outrage. It was about actual solutions to prevent industrial-scale abuse. Lam's questioning strategy revealed a concerning pattern in Phillips's responses. Rather than engaging with the substantive policy questions, Phillips repeatedly retreated to emotional territory. This became particularly evident when Lam raised specific amendments proposed by the opposition that would strengthen the legal framework surrounding grooming gangs. These weren't trivial proposals. They included guaranteeing quarterly publication of ethnicity data for transparency purposes.
Finally, I would like to read to the House one particular ordeal, just one example of what these children have suffered. I must warn colleagues, and especially those in the gallery, that this is extremely graphic. I voted for a national inquiry and tabled amendments which would guarantee the publication of ethnicity data on a quarterly basis, terminate the parental rights of convicted sex offenders, and make membership of a grooming gang an aggravating factor during sentencing. Sentencing Mohammed Karar of Oxford to life in prison, Judge Peter Rook said, "You prepared your victim, a 13-year-old girl, for gang anal rape by using a pump to expand her anal passage." He was detained twice in one night while, on the very same evening, his daughter was repeatedly assaulted and abused by a gang of men. It is clear these criminals were unafraid of law enforcement.
Something that would provide crucial insights into patterns of abuse. The opposition had also proposed terminating the parental rights of convicted sex offenders, a measure designed to protect children from further harm. Additionally, they suggested making membership in a grooming gang an aggravating factor during sentencing, which would lead to harsher penalties for these predators. Each of these amendments represented serious, thoughtful approaches to combating grooming gangs. Yet Phillips's responses failed to address them substantively. As Lam continued pressing for specifics, Phillips's composure noticeably deteriorated. The practiced confidence that had become her political signature began cracking under the weight of factual inquiry. The pivotal moment came when Phillips, seemingly unable to provide substantive answers, pivoted to discussing a man thousands of miles away who had criticized her. In her own words, "I suppose the thing that my strongest feeling is that there is a huge furore about something a man thousands of miles away said about me that has led to an issue that I care so deeply about and have dedicated most of my working life and quite a lot of my personal life to making better and supporting victims, specifically of grooming gangs, really directly." This deflection spoke volumes. Rather than addressing Lam's pointed questions about labor's approach to grooming gangs, Phillips redirected to an unrelated personal grievance. The strategy backfired spectacularly, raising uncomfortable questions about what the government might be avoiding. These questions became even more pertinent in light of a leaked letter from Phillips that revealed her rejection of a full inquiry into the grooming gang scandal following Labor's loss of control of Oldham Council. This decision triggered significant backlash, with both the Conservatives and Reform calling for a comprehensive national inquiry. The existence of this letter cast a shadow over Phillips's claims of dedication to the issue and raised serious concerns about potential cover-ups. What makes Lam's approach particularly effective is its clinical precision. There was no shouting, no theatrics, just a clinical, well-aimed takedown that exposed the hollowness of emotional rhetoric when not backed by substantive policy. Her questioning demonstrated that fact-based inquiry can cut through even the most practiced political performances. The implications extend far beyond this single exchange. As grooming gang investigations continue, the government's resistance to independent inquiries raises troubling questions about transparency and accountability. The proposed amendments, publishing ethnicity data, revoking parental rights of offenders, and enhancing penalties for gang membership, remain critical yet unaddressed issues in the fight against child sexual exploitation. For victims of grooming gangs, this parliamentary exchange represents more than political theater. It highlights how performative politics can actually hinder justice and accountability. When emotional appeals replace substantive action, the most vulnerable members of society suffer the consequences. What we witnessed in Parliament wasn't just a verbal exchange, it was a stark illustration of how political theater fails the vulnerable. Anna's case embodies this tragedy perfectly. At just 14, she repeatedly reported being raped to social workers, yet authorities failed her so completely that she ended up married to her abuser in a ceremony her social worker actually attended. The disturbing reality extends even further. Shabir Ahmed, the Rodale rape gang's ringleader, worked as a welfare rights officer for Oldham Council. This institutional failure demands more than Phillips's verbal spaghetti of emotional appeals. True political strength lies in Lam's approach: unnerving precision, factual clarity, and accountability that victims deserve.